There she is. Hey there, Danielle.
Hey, how's it going? All right, in the options room, Raghee's going to jump in, and I have a bunch of just different. I have an ebook that I wrote for Carolyn that I was going to share, and anything else you wanted to share as well, Raghee.
And we'll go with your screen. So, do you have a screen capture going on in the SF room?
I can get that up for you.
Sweet. How's everyone doing, by the way? Well, before we kick off this session, I do want to mention, and I don't know if you want to pull this up at some point, because I know Carolyn put this in one of her free videos just last week. And this was the play on FXI, which I love because it's a market that I'm long in. And we had a pretty nice little move, gap up today. This is about a dollar and a half move on a $42 name.
Oh, sorry, Raghee. They're saying we have an echo.
So yeah, just last week, Fib Queen had an FXI play, and I don't know if you can pull up FXI there, Danielle. I think everyone's got your charts right.
Oh, great.
So so there it is. So this is a really cool play on China. Now, I can talk about narrative and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, we need an actual setup and a cluster of support. And a lot of my narrative is macro, it's fundamental, but the touchstone of the entire market is getting that support level that we can buy. Yeah, I can hear myself, and I don't know why that is. For those of you guys who have an echo. So one of the things I want to point out is this level was actually a Fibonacci cluster. So we're actually working on the audio in a minute, and then we'll talk about these kinds of systems that are aided by these kinds of support levels, because having a narrative is one thing, but being able to understand why that floor exists. I mean, this was an easy peasy bounce. So that there's a fundamental reason, and then I've got, say, a 42 support based upon just the handle, 100 weekly simple average sitting there at about 4.5, and then boom, here comes a cluster. That's what's going to help me much more aggressively buy the at the money calls, or just flat out in a case of a $42 name or 40, 41, buy a whole lot more, knowing that I've got the kind of technical support that I need. And then 50 would say, no trigger, no trade. As an ETF, I may not get the opportunity to wait for a shorter term intraday cross. So having a whole lot more confidence to get long on a Friday into the close. So,
yeah,
Danielle,
you want to show your charts, Raghee?
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
That's the
most
recent
Fibonacci welcome packet.
Cool. Very cool.
This because I know that Fibonacci can be people, and I basically into like to explain, hey, this is Fibonacci, this is why it's important, these are the main aspects of Fib that we use, just to kind of give it a nice overview of the reasons behind it. Does that make sense?
Love it. And I want to mention something for people who are interested in Fibonacci, just to give you some basics of how elementary I started off with my Fibonacci analysis. And Neil talks about this phenomenon when he's doing his intraday stuff. And that is kind of this concept of the halfback, or even something as just basic as the 50% retracement of a last major move. I mean, that's how I started on my Fibonacci journey. Now, obviously, Carolyn's work, look, Carolyn and I've been trading the markets for, going on 30 years now. I can tell you guys, Carolyn is like the top Fibonacci practitioner on the planet. I mean, that's what we have access to. So when I started off looking at, like, say, halfbacks and 50% retracements, that's what started even the most basic way that I use Fibonacci. So for those of you that are kind of like, it's to look at how to utilize this, start there. Then you can start to go 82 and a 618, and you can continue expand. I mean, how did you start off, Danielle? I mean, I know you started off, doing Fibo with Carolyn's work, and then you sort of have gotten now to the point where you're really good at it too.
Oh, thank you. I mean, honestly, it was when I ended up coming to awesome, NASDAQ above 7,300. It was coming to one of the mentorships down in Austin. I had been following John and Henry, I don't know, probably, and I was just really having trouble with my entry and exit points and taking profits at the right time. And so when I met Carolyn at the event, she told me, she's like, oh, you need Fib. It's not that hard. You can do it. So I went home from the event and I bought her book and I bought one of her classes. And at first, I remember thinking there's so many lines, it's so confusing, but it's really, really simple once you actually learn it. So at first, I just figured out how to use it and how to take trades off of the work that she was doing. And so then at that point, I was able to download her charts and use her charts in the trading room to actually off of those levels. And then over time, learning how to draw my own symmetry, which is it's quite easy once you figure out how to do it. And I mean, I can't even trade without using symmetry now. So I started learning how to draw symmetry. And then once I got good at that, I added in those Fibonacci extensions and retracements to really work on the clusters. So at this point, yes, I would say I'm pretty versed in it. But I mean, I can't imagine trading without it. It's just kind of, I'm blind at that point. So.
And I think that's really cool about, that's very cool. And that's neat about Fib. And actually, do you have like my FXI, do you have a recent example of something where you use Fibonacci to confirm a level? Or, I'm actually thinking back to even a trade on crude on a 480-minute time frame. And on everyone look at the screen right now, we had eyes that I was looking at. And then what I'll usually do, and we don't do a ton of Fibo in our room because we just haven't done the training yet. So this is where once everyone's a little bit better versed on some of these levels, like, you read the packet that Danielle shared, it'll be easier to explain. Like I pulled a quick Fibo and realized that some of the levels that I was looking at represented some of the most rudimentary Fibonacci retracements, which for me end up with a little cluster between 382, 50, and 618. And I'll just pull the last major move, look for a quick retracement. And if it lines up with my wave, if it lines up with my Darvis, I've got that much more confirmation as to why a level like that would be helpful. And this is a buy that we put on in crude just last week. So if you're thinking to yourself, Rog, how would I recognize this? And I'm not using some of these other tools. Fibonacci and the 382 pretty much nailed why this move right in here from the high to hitting this green line or this magenta line, Fibonacci pretty much nailed why my buy limits would be sitting there. And that's where I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. And, Raghee brings up a really good point. I love using, I love combining Raghee's stuff with Carolyn's levels, with Fibonacci, especially finding those overlaps between different Fib levels and a Darvis box, or if you use like the voodoo lines or anything else. I mean, Fibonacci is very versatile in the fact that you can combine it with anything. And so, especially Henry and I have really combined that with the squeeze. So that combination for us, I mean, if you ask for a recent example, I mean, every single trade that I have, I always run levels on. I mean, if you look at the NASDAQ on a daily chart, and MasterCard and Visa, those are perfect examples. MasterCard, Visa, those two pull back to symmetry over and over and over again and take off on their trend. I mean, even if you don't know how to draw symmetry, just you can look at that pulling back to the wave and look at those symmetrical movements. I mean, if you learn how to measure those, that's where you can get in right on that pullback. And, I think that it was actually something that you said to me, Raghee. It was, And this was very, very hard for me as a new trader, because as a new trader, when I was following John, when I was following Henry, this is what happened every single time. They would post a trade alert and I would look at it and I'd say, oh, I don't really know about that. I'm not sure if I should take it. It doesn't really look good, because you know why? They're buying at the lows. They're not buying at the highs. And then of course it starts coming up like Amazon today, like Netflix, like Facebook. And when you're new, you think to yourself, oh, right now I should buy it. It's working now. And of course, you know, always buy the highs when you're new. And of course, every experienced trader is like, oh God, no, please. Like, it happens to us every single day in the room. Oh, can we buy it now? No, you can't buy it now. You were supposed to buy it 5 days ago, you know? And so that problem for me was resolved the best by one thing Raghee said to me was, hey, this is a sale. The stock market is the only place that people don't like sales. In the stock market, we are looking for a sale. And that was what clicked the light bulb to me, actually. It was that combination combined with Carolyn's buy it on a pullback. How do you figure out where the pullback is? You use a Darvis box. You use symmetry. That's the only way you're going to stop yourself from buying at the highs. So I don't know. I did it over and over again. Then it was just like, oh, I get it.
Well, that's actually a really good example of somewhere today where I should have thought a little bit more aggressively about a fib. So I'm actually happy we're talking about this, because even I need a reminder, because we've got oftentimes so many indicators and we forget, hey, there are some really basic foundational ones. And I'm actually thinking about into the close today, we didn't have much of a pullback. And that's really the essence of what I look at. And we kind of fell short of my wave, even though my prop dots were lit up and I wanted to buy it. I'm looking at this really nice 50% retracement we got before the market punched up to higher highs. Now, when I don't get when I don't get a pullback back to where I need, I'm kind of relegated then to say, well, okay, on the flip side, we can play the momentum break through the upper end of the Darvis, but that risk reward is so lousy compared to what Fibonacci can offer. And I'm actually kicking, because had I looked at this, this was a really nice 50% pullback in that 72.75, 72.76 area, are at stinking 73.01. So I'm telling you guys as much as I'm telling myself, these are the kind of things that's going to, even intraday, like I mentioned a lot of times, Neil's going to talk about a halfback, 100% retracement really of a recent move. So it's applicable to any time frame, right? I can pull this on a monthly, I can pull this on a 1 minute.
And that was and one thing too about studying all of the different traders, learning from each one of you, just like you said, Neil calls it a halfback. What is that? It's a 50% Fibonacci retracement. And then when I started learning from you, Raghee, was like, oh my gosh, the Darvis box, same concept. It's, pullback buy. And I love using those Darvis boxes plus Fibonacci. I mean, and just like you're saying, Craig, it's easy to get indicator overload. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the indicators are so important. And that we all have slightly different indicators that we use. And I know that can be confusing for a lot of people, but just like you're saying, using fib, I mean, it does not change. It is the same on any chart, any time frame. You can combine it with what other indicators you already use. And it's just a really powerful skill in technical analysis to be able to draw those yourself and figure out, if it works for you.
And I'll add something too when it comes to the indicators, and this might help in the beginning as far as sort of prioritizing which comes first. So to me, in my early stages, I would use things like a 50%, 382, 618, right? Because I was using very rudimentary Fibonacci, which is a good place to start. But then I remembered Fibonacci is a way of finding alternative support and resistance. And I really believe that we're going to continue higher throughout the year, which means a lot of stocks, a lot of ETFs, and a lot of index. I mean, look at where crude's at. Whenever you start wandering into higher highs at all-time highs, at that point, you really don't have any support and resistance other than Fibonacci to project beyond where we've already been. So Fibonacci actually becomes really, for me, the only tool you can use in an environment where you're making higher highs because it can project highs. And then another thing to think about is if you put your Fibonacci levels out there first, you've done your symmetry work, you've done your retracement work, and then you go look at your indicators, right? Let's say we've got a Fibonacci level and the market's made a 50 or 382 retracement, and then it just sits and starts to go sideways. One of my favorite ways to play the squeeze is we have a Fibonacci range and then we start to go sideways within it, or we have a Darvis range, we start to go sideways in it. That's a terrific way to identify, for me, the consolidation that I love to see before a squeeze, and Fibo levels are awesome for that. Do you find you ever do anything like that, Danielle?
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on, I was looking for this document that that explains how to set up your Fibonacci tool. But yeah, I mean, I use all of it. I really like I think the thing that helped me the most in the very beginning was learning symmetry and understanding that different charts pull back in a different way. You know, a pullback in BABA will look different than a pullback in MasterCard, and understanding that and symmetry helped me the most with that. And then like using the extension targets to figure out where you're supposed to take your profits, because that was very difficult for me. And then as I got better, started using those retracements, like you're saying, like the pullback levels as well. So that's very, very helpful. And I use them. Yeah.
Go ahead. I mean, take a look at this MasterCard.
Well, and I was going to say too.
Is that about where you got in? Like if we pull back where we went green, red, green, is that about where you were? Because that was a 618. Would that be something that you would recommend? So a lot of traders might have gone negative, might have said, oh my gosh, this market's rolling over. And then you have this golden mean staring you in the face going, no, this is support. That could make a big difference about staying on the right side of the trend. I mean, is that something that you think is pretty rudimentary?
Huge.
Yeah,
absolutely. That 618 is very, very important. So you can use it that direction, just like you're showing, looking at that 618 retracement to buy on the pullback. And that one in particular has symmetry overlapped with it. So that was where I was looking for the entry on MasterCard. I also like using it on the way up though. So, you know, if you use that previous high to low and then looking for the 618 as resistance to the upside, because you will find over and over again that you're going to find major resistance at that 618 or at the 786. So a lot of the times when I'm in a bullish setup that fails, it fails around the 618 or the 786. So that also enables me to get out earlier, or just understand, hey, it's pausing here.
For sure. Now I got a question here. What do you mean by symmetry?
So symmetry is just measuring the previous moves and seeing how a previous move measures exactly or symmetrically with the current move. So if you look at that, the swing on the far left side from the top of the high of that Darvis box to the low of the purple Darvis box, that move is perfectly symmetrical with this last pullback that we had, all the way over to the left, the one before that. Yeah, that high, all the way to the bigger one.
Oh, the bigger one. Okay, okay.
I measure all of them, but that swing right there is perfectly
I need to learn the symmetry stuff. I need to learn this stuff. Oh my gosh.
So look at that. Do you see how, I mean, even without measuring it exactly, do you see how that previous swing matches the current high to low swing? So
for
that is where
the market's made a certain move before, you could use that measurement and project that it's going to do that same move again. Exactly.
So if you look at certain charts, they move very symmetrically. And so you can say, hey, this is the personality of this chart. This is how much it moved last time. It moved the same amount this time. And since it stopped at the bottom where you have your symmetry support and triggered for a long, that gives you high probability entry point. coupled with that 618 retracement level that you discussed to get into the long side there.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. It totally does. And those that kind of,
I love symmetry.
Now, what about something like choppy, like Visa? Where would, see, like for a lot of traders that are trend traders like myself, where would something like I'm bullish on Visa, right? But this is a much uglier chart.
Uh-huh.
When we're looking for clarity in terms of which direction, which side to pick, is there a certain retracement that you think, like if we go beyond it, all hell is breaking loose, or that we should keep faith if we stay above a certain level? Are there levels like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is one of the main ways that I use symmetry. So what I do is looking at Visa daily chart. I mean, really, and Carolyn's the best person to show you, hey, these are the swings that you're supposed to measure and everything, which, you know, I learned from her, like we're saying. But if you look at the Visa daily chart and you look back at the past 8 pullbacks or so, and then you measure those past 8 pullbacks and you project them from the newest recent high, which is at the top of that purple Darvis box right there, then it will give you an entry point at the low, which coincidentally is right near your yellow Darvis box low. Okay. So it lines up perfectly. Yeah, right there. So if you draw an arrow over those previous swings and you see how many of them match up, like they look like they're the same. They look like they're the same size. So when I would get out is if I have like 2 or 3 levels of symmetry that break, because you can see there's one major larger swing. So that would give you a much lower support area. But the other swings that you highlighted, they're all just about the same. So if the current swing starts breaking that amount, then that's when I start getting out. So it's just called the break in symmetry.
Okay.
So if I have a break in symmetry, then that to me is an exit sign. And you would get that, you know, before you're probably going to be stopped out usually. So
what's interesting is, for me, this is a market that is very viable, but yet it's sort of grinding higher. When I say grinding, it's not really holding for me a really good clean up trend. But with these symmetry moves, I would be bamboozled into thinking it was a short, right? I'd stick with the long side because those symmetry moves would say, look, this is about the average price movement that we would see for a correction again and again and again. So as this thing grinds higher, you know, I would be kind of looking for consolidation or something. But it looks like Fibonacci nailed this thing the whole way up. As long as we stay above the 200 EMA here, it just seems like it's easy to keep the bullish bias, look for the symmetry, and then buy that. So I got to learn how to do the symmetry thing.
Oh yeah, I would love to teach you symmetry. Symmetry is amazing. I love it so much, and that was one of the main factors that I added into the 5-star because it was so critical for me. And a lot of times you'll see that symmetry lines up with your Darvis boxes, so it's an even stronger area of support for me.
For sure. So I think what I want to mention is, so obviously, you know, what I want to mention is we're having our summer series starting tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah. So yep. Carolyn's first.
Why don't you bring it up? Go ahead. Good.
No, you go on.
I'm trying to actually bring up the link, so I was conveniently stalling so I could type and type in.
Sorry. Yeah, well, Carolyn is starting. So this is a really cool series because it enables all of our trading team to kind of come together over the same topic, but each putting their own spin on it. So Carolyn's going to start it out where she's going to go through and teach Fibonacci, which is what she does, you know, and then after that, John is going to come in, do the live trading with her, and he's going to show you how he actually trades using her work. And then after that, each week, a different member of our trading team is going to have their own segment on their own work and how they relate that to Fib as well. So I think Henry is going to be up next, which of course, you know, Carolyn trained Henry back in the day, and you know, he's one of the people who got me to want to learn Fibonacci as well because he uses it so frequently in his work. I mean, we were talking about that. It's like, I'm just blind without Fibonacci. I can't look at a chart without it. So, and then of course, Raghee is going to have her segment, which she's going to do just like what you're doing today, right, Raghee, where you're combining your core indicators and your core work with that addition of Fib.
Absolutely.
And then Bruce is going to have a section.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Keep going.
Yeah, go on.
There's a question here about time symmetry. Now, so yeah, everyone's going to definitely have their own shot at taking Carolyn's work and applying it to, Bruce, amazing income trader. Henry, you guys, Henry's actually improved my options trading. No kidding, 10x in just the 3 or 4 years that I've kind of been mentored by him in terms of understanding IV rank better, and things like that. And then actually watching the way John uses it in live trading. And then what I'm going to show you guys is what I do with it on intraday stuff. So everyone's going to have a different angle on how to put Fibonacci to work with basically the world's premier practitioner of Fibonacci. So quick question for you, Danielle. Time symmetry. What can you explain to folks about what they can learn about projecting not just price, but time? Because we have a lot of day traders in the room, or people that are looking for, option decay, or whatever. How can you use the time symmetry in that regard?
So Carolyn does project, she just calls it timing, but she does project timing as well. She doesn't do it on every single chart. She primarily will project timing on things like NASDAQ futures, S&P futures, to look for major timing reversals in the overall market. That's what she does as part of her. She does also teach it, though, of course, if you want to learn how to do it yourself. I'm not sure if timing is going to be included in this particular class or not, but that is something that Carolyn is an expert in. There is a chapter on it in her book, and she has taught some classes on it as well.
Carolyn, I think if you ask Carolyn nicely, and that's the key there, she will talk about it. Yes. She is very jealous. But you got to ask her nicely. Excellent.
And so, Allie, if you're getting, sorry, I was just gonna say, Allie, if you're getting too many lines when you're running symmetry, it's because your tool is not set up correctly. So you see that document that I just posted that says how to set up your Fibonacci tools. If you go ahead and read that, created for my last class, so it has my moving averages and everything in there, but it explains exactly how to set up your tool so it works properly. So I highly recommend checking out that document, and that should fix up that problem for you. Danielle, one of the things that I'm struggling with is identifying the specific highs and lows to run symmetry of. Carolyn makes it look so simple. I understand it's years of experience, but with the process of identifying the right highs and lows be covered in these 2 hours. So that, first of all, that is what she teaches in her classes, is how to pick the right highs and lows to draw the levels. Can I say that you will be able to do it like a professional in 2 hours? This stuff takes time, just like anything else, but if you want to learn it, the place to learn it is going to be class. You can watch the class over more than once, and it's not just 2 hours. I mean, all of the different traders are going to have their segment as well. I'm sure Henry will use it quite frequently. I always use it in the trading room. And you can always get Carolyn's book to complement the live class, which was how I learned it. I read the book and took the classes. So it just kind of depends, what kind of learner you are. I like to see written examples, but the best thing that you can do is just to try to spend some effort on it, because it was the best thing that I did. I was going to quit trading until I discovered how to do Fibonacci. So yeah. I was having a rough, I can show you something that the chart that changed. I don't know. I was just having a really rough time at that point in time when Carolyn came in and fixed me up with the Fibonacci. But
What was the chart? What was the chart that saved your life?
So go to Apple on a weekly chart.
Apple. Okay. Okay. So actually, this brings up a really good point, because some of the questions we're getting is, can you do multiple time frame? Oh, gang, we've gone from a 5-minute NQ pullback to now Danielle's going to show this to you guys in a weekly. So remember, Fibonacci is a mathematical law of nature. It's not really even, I wouldn't even minimize it to becoming an indicator. Human nature has a certain ebb and flow, and that's why Fibonacci works. But yeah, what was the setup? What time of year?
So if you actually zoom out more so you can see all the way back to those two major downswings starting in September. Scroll out just a little bit more.
Sure. Hang on. A little bit more. How about that?
Yeah, that's perfect. So you see those two major downswings on that Apple weekly chart? Yeah, that one right there.
Symmetry?
Yes, yes. So at this time, where this is a good story. So at this time, my dad, he's been a trader for like 30 years. Okay. And at this point in time, I'd only been trading for, it's like 2 years. And I had a ton of Apple stock. My dad had bought it for $7.49 a share in 2004. And once I proved myself as a trader, he let me take control of that when it was, 2014, I guess. 2014, yeah. So, of course, everything was great. You see Apple 2014, 2015, I opened my portfolio. I'm like, yes, everything's awesome. I'm making money. I'm doing nothing on this Apple stock. Then do you see that major downturn that Apple had between 2015 and 2016? That was the worst month I ever had in trading. It was January 2016. I lost so much money. I had a bunch of long stock, and you see how bad that chart looks, right?
Did you see the little self-portrait I made of you there? I put a little self-portrait there.
Oh, yeah. That was my perfect self-portrait. Yes, perfect self-portrait. And it was at the end of that month that I went to go to Austin, and I sold my Apple stock, half of it, $86 a share. Do you see this?
Oh
see
my
how
gosh.
It's low at perfect symmetry?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Before I learned what symmetry was. So anyways, I tell my dad, I say, I can't tolerate this pain anymore. He's like, it's a long-term hold. It's not a big deal. It's going to come back, yada, yada, yada. I didn't listen, of course, like usual. And I sold half of it at the dead lows. And Apple's worth what today? $190.
And what's really interesting,
and look at that perfect symmetry.
Oh gosh, yeah, for sure. For sure. So there's before symmetry and there's after symmetry. You are the new improved Danielle 2.0.
So now, whenever you think you're being tortured, and usually the lesson in this chart is when you're feeling the most amount of pain, that's typically when it starts to turn around. But the only way to measure that is like with Fib, for me anyways. So I look at that chart and I just remember how important symmetry is. So that's my story.
Wow. And that saved your life.
It did.
Fantastic. All right. So gang, I just pushed that Fibonacci welcome packet through, and that's a great document to sort of get started. But the whole idea is, once you understand what Fibonacci can do, and what Danielle and I have shown you guys are the things that I've learned. And by the way, if you think you need to be an absolute expert, and if some of this seems so daunting, because Danielle and Henry both out with such ease, I'm not even a Fib expert, but what 1/3 of what Carolyn teaches, and it makes a big difference in my life. So you don't have to just completely, spend all the time that eventually you will, because you're going to find it does yield results. But if in the beginning you just use some basics, like even the most rudimentary of retracements and some basic, just adding that supplements understanding, support, kind of hope that's where, the confidence I had in FXI, this is actually went on camera up in New York. Danielle was with me, and I basically said to, I don't know, a gazillion traders out there, buy this, right? And it's these kinds of moves in terms of getting down to clusters or getting to a retracement or having symmetry that make me more confident. So it's stacking just things like mathematical laws of nature on your sides. The cool thing about Fibonacci is it's probably the second thing that I personally ever learned. And you'll find it doesn't ever replace anything doesn't supplant anything. It just continues to supplement. And it's something you'll continue to grow with, and then you'll just become a more astute Fibonacci practitioner. But in the beginning, you could just use the most basic elements of it, and you will notice a massive difference in the confidence you have. And if you're an intraday trader, even simple halfback moves. I mean, Neil does it all the time when he's scalping. Simple halfback moves, knowing what high and low to recognize to find that halfback is really at the heart of what Fibonacci is. So that's really where ultimately that's the needle mover here. You know, it doesn't mean that everything you do needs to go to Fibonacci and symmetry. For those of you that are feeling like, oh, okay, this is interesting, but maybe a little daunting. Like Danielle said, she dedicated some time, but I can tell you in the very beginning, if all you do is just understand some of the basics of which retracement and even some basics of symmetry. I mean, Danielle, I think those are things you could put to work in a matter of a week or two of practice. I mean, those are very basic elements, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can learn the basics pretty quickly, and to draw the larger clusters does take some time, but you should be able to pick up at least, you know, the retracements and extensions and symmetry relatively easily with some studying and some effort, of course.
Exactly. And anyone who's studied what I do with the wave, and I'm getting some questions, Rog, how does this work with what you do? Almost everything that I have, minus the Darvis, is based upon, in some way, a Fibonacci number or different kinds of realities of the arithmetic, the mathematics, if you will, of Fibonacci. I mean, the reason that I pick the moving average settings that I pick, the reason that I pick the numbers that I pick in propulsion, those are all Fibonacci numbers. So I think Fibonacci in a different way runs throughout all my trading too, Kat, to your question there. And then a lot of times you're going to have levels that aren't going to be covered by Darvis or a gap or a pattern, and you're thinking, why is the market responding there? A lot of times you're going to find it's symmetry or a Fibonacci. So seemingly invisible levels that suddenly seem to be in play. I mean, Danielle, wouldn't you say a lot of times that's what Fibonacci can project, like this mystery of why is the market stopping there? And you go back and do some symmetry work or even find a halfback or 618, like, oh, it was a golden mean. It wasn't something as obvious as a minor low, minor high. Yeah, yeah. So
yeah, so
that's
once
why
you figure out how to, yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where once you figure out how to draw it, then you just, I remember thinking, I have no idea where to draw this from. This is so hard. But the only thing that you can do to learn that is like watch us draw it over and over again. And then after a while, when I look at a chart now, I can just see it. Oh, that looks like a retracement, or that looks like an extension. So you just get used to it.
Absolutely. And Michael asked a really fair question, and this would probably apply to all of technical analysis. Michael asked, doesn't it work because everybody's using it? Like, is there a certain self-fulfilling prophecy to technical analysis? And that's usually meant to be sort of, and I know that's not what you're doing there, Michael, but oftentimes it's kind of a knock against TA. And you know, one of the things I'll tell you is the reason sometimes technical analysis, like a 200 period exponential moving average, or like a death cross, golden cross, 50% retracement, the reason it works is because, you're right, it's because people do expect it to work. So if we have high expectation of a certain reaction at a certain level, it behooves us to know where that is. And I think anyone who's really into technical analysis gets furious at me for saying that there is a certain self-fulfilling prophecy to TA, but that's one of the powers of it. So in the beginning, does symmetry actually have a certain self-fulfilling prophecy? Absolutely. But if you don't know how to recognize the symmetry, then you can't take advantage of exactly what you're saying. So I think that's actually one of the benefits to any kind of TA, knowing that there's a certain rhythm to the market, and that's the ebb and flow that Fibonacci recognizes and identifies for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Very helpful.
All right. So let's see.
I think I'm going to take Rhonda's question here.
Sure.
Rhonda wants to know, very interested in learning the other traders' techniques. I've been focusing on learning Fib Queens, Danielle, and JCs. Do you think the bundle will be too much information for a beginner? So that's a very good question, and I would love to hear Raghee's opinion after I just kind of explain what I think about that. First of all, when you are new, of course, it is hard to have so many different traders with different ideas, but at the same time, that's the only way that you are going to be able to figure out what you want. So in the beginning, we keep saying you need a plan, you need a plan, you need to follow your plan. But when you're a beginner, you don't know how to write a plan. So the best way to figure out how to write your own plan is to listen to Raghee, to listen to Carolyn, to listen to John. And from that, you pull from that, you say, hey, I really like that tool she uses, or I really like that strategy that he uses. And that is how you make your own plan. Is it a lot of information? Yeah, of course it's a lot of information. But I honestly think this is really cool. It's a lot of information from a bunch of our traders in a short amount of time. And studying different people to figuring out what you like is the only way that you will be able to write your own trading plan.
I think there's
what do you have to say
things.
about that?
No, I agree. I think there's two things, Rhonda, that I look at, and I can tell you this is something I'm doing too. So when we do a class, we don't do it again. Like we do it once and then that's that. And then there might be a new nuance that we found, but we won't repeat the classes here. That's simpler. So, when I've done tops is done. When Danielle's done, the Futures Freedom with me or her Ready Aim Freedom, it's done, right? So what's great is what you're going to get out of this class. And I can tell you from 30 years, what I get out of the class or any class, the first time I go through it is whatever I'm ready to absorb. And then you have access to these classes for forever, right? So maybe 6 months down the road, when you've taken some of the basics of, say, John and Carolyn's session, you go, oh, how does Henry do this? And then you go back, dive into the class. And then you go, oh, okay, now I've got a better understanding. And then maybe 3 months after that, you dove into what I do because now you're ready to do some intraday trading and futures or things like that. So the great thing is you can kind of go through it at your own pace. The idea that once the class is done and you're never going to be able to look at it again, this class is something you'll refer to again and again and again. It was actually when Bruce did his AIM class, I actually went through AIM not 30 days ago, and he did this almost, 6 or 8 months ago. So I'll find myself going through. When Danielle talks about 5-star, I've gone through, here in my office, I've gone through your class, Danielle, a number of times looking at what you look at for 5-star, and I realized, oh, all right. The second time around, the third time around, I realized actually how similar we trade, but I didn't get it the first time. Right. So
I know it's so funny.
So I think in the beginning, here's the thing, Rhonda, in the beginning, you might find a few nuances from each one of us and take just that one thing and only take that one thing. And then maybe go through it again in a month or two, and you'll find something else. And then as you grow, every time you come back to the class, you'll get something out of it again and again and again. And I think that's for me. I mean, I've got a bookshelf from floor to ceiling of courses that I go back to. Some of these are 20, 25 years old, and I'll go back to them again and again and again going, oh, I see something different now because I've changed as a trader. So don't feel like you need to put all of it to work. I think in the very beginning, if you're brand new to Fibonacci, learn the symmetry and learn the rudimentary corrections. And even that is going to be a massive needle mover, I think. I mean, and every one of the traders is going to say, point out, hey, this is the one thing that really helped me. Doing this thing is what really helped me. So get one thing from each trader and then go back and get another thing. So I think that's how you evolve in any kind of skill, especially Fibonacci.
Exactly.
So
yeah, awesome.
Are there any other questions for Danielle and I? And I just want to mention again, we kick it off with Fib Queen and John. And then after that, Henry, Bruce, myself will dive into different nuances. So, the way Henry puts on, I'm not even going to put words into Henry's mouth. I'm not sure what Henry's going to teach, but is it on there? But I mean, I know that for me, Bruce and Henry have completely 10x'd my options trading. And then I'm going to be talking about a little different nuance to how I use Fibonacci in futures and intraday type trading. And then even something like the FXI play that I have going on in a bunch of ETFs. So I think you'll get something out of each one of us that's a little bit different that will also help you with a different asset class, which is also a really important part of this too. It's not going to be this.
Awesome.
Here's a list.
Well, oh yeah. Henry primarily going to focus on credit spreads, I think. Credit spreads at the at specific fib levels.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right.
Yeah, cool. And earnings too. Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, and I mean the timing for this couldn't be better, because if there's any time that I try to do my best to get in the SO room, because it has so much ramification for futures, is this time of year. Heck, just over the weekend, you and I were talking about earnings plays. You know, and I think also
I love it.
Oh yeah, and then also for those of you asking about TOS, Henry is going to be diving into the TOS tool. So for those of you that are saying, hey, it's a little trickier on the TOS platform, Henry is fluent in TOS, and so is Bruce. But he's going to be going into the drawing tools in TOS. So we'll have a much deeper dive into that. I don't think it's there, but I do know he is a master at the drawing tools. So he'll get into that too. So if you need to know some of the mechanics of how to do that on the platform, Henry's your guy. All right. And then he'll dive into the symmetry too. So if you catch Carolyn's use of symmetry and then you go take a look at Henry, because Henry's been trained on Carolyn, you'll kind of get a good 1-2 punch on symmetry. So I think that's all I've got. I think we're out of questions here. So anything else before we kind of wrap it up? And we'll see you guys in this summer series. You know, July, everyone's like sitting next to their pool drinking, I don't know, rosé, but you guys are going to learn how to trade Fibonacci. So come August, September, you're going to kick their butts, because a lot of traders have to skate during summer, and bad idea, because before you know it, we're going to be in the fall trading season, and I think we're going to be seeing some really nice higher highs, and I can't wait to, well, I got to learn the symmetry thing. So I'll be in the classes too, but I'll be showing you guys how I do a lot of intraday stuff as well. So check out,
it'll be awesome.
Simpler Trading. It will be amazing. So check out simplertrading.com/summer. Skip the rosé by the pool, or heck, actually, you can watch the class while you're floating in the pool, now that I think about it. So,
or even better, get your work done and then play later.
Yahtzee, there you go, and just kick everybody's butt come August, September, because I'm looking forward to that. All right, gang, thank you so much for your interest in Fibonacci. Danielle, thank you so much. Looking forward to those earnings plays as well from you, girl. You've been slaying it these last few earnings seasons.
Oh my gosh, I love earnings season. I was telling, I think it was Mandy when we were in New York. I just told her, I was like, you know, my 4 favorite times to trade are really going to be, I guess it's not 4 separate times, but is that run into earnings in the tech, in the tech industry. NASDAQ, those are generally my most profitable months. And then additionally, like whenever there's a daily squeeze on the NASDAQ or S&Ps, something like that, like those are 2 favorite setups. And right now, like these 2 weeks leading up into earnings is really, really good time. And that's partly what Henry is going to be focusing his section on, with those credit spreads coupled with that run into earnings play. So
it sounds like symmetry and earnings is like peanut butter and chocolate. You put it together and bam, everybody's happy.
Oh, exactly. I
love it.
That's yeah.
All right, gang. Thank you so much. Check out simplertrading.com/summer, and myself and Carolyn and Bruce and Henry will see you all there.
Yep. Have an awesome rest of your day. Talk to you later.
Good
trading.
Absolutely.